And ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It is Monday, President's Day, February 20th of the year 2023. And we are getting off about a week or so
Week.
after I
Yep.
almost blew my brains out of my skull watching Kansas City Chiefs win their Super Bowl. So
Red Kingdom.
I don't know what's worse. Like the Red Kingdom song is annoying.
Oh yeah.
But at least it's not as racist as the tomahawk chalk
I know,
that
right?
that is no the tomahawk chalk is
Oh,
the
it's very.
equivalent.
Oh yeah,
It
it's
is the
racist.
equivalent of throwing up a Nazi hand salute.
It's
It
it's
is
it.
virtually the same thing.
Because they don't do it. Here's the thing, though. I don't get it. Okay, why did the Cleveland Indians have to change their name to the Guardians? And the Washington Redskins had to change their name to the Commanders,
Mhm.
but you still have the Atlanta Braves. You have the Kansas City Chiefs, and you still have and the University of Illinois is still the Fighting Illini, um, the Seminoles of Florida State.
Florida State. Mhm.
I mean,
Chiefs is the worst.
well, of course,
Honestly, they should just
Probably
change
some
it
money
to
involved.
just change it to the Kansas City Rednecks or the Kansas City White Trash, anything or Kansas City. Call them the DAs, the Kansas City Domestic Abusers. That would be the team name as they've ridden
You
on the
have something
coattails of.
against Kansas
oh
City? What
my
happened to
gosh,
you?
Sean,
Not too much. No.
this is just.
Uh,
How long has this been going on for now, Sean? I mean,
I thought you had a good experience when you
you and
lived
I
out
have been
there.
harping on this since the days when you were in my classroom, I believe. I mean, we always. I
I'll
mean,
never forget. I think it was my freshman year of high school was the first time I went to Arrowhead, and as a freshman in high school, that was like the first time I had like seen adult men like threatened to harm a child just because I was wearing a different jersey and was called some slurs I won't repeat on this. And then I think what bothered me the most, realistically, this is just me being a grumbled old asshole, I guess. But what bothered me the most was when I lived in Warrensburg and I lived in the Kansas City area, right? And Travis, I don't know if you can attest to this or not, but this is how it was for me. And it was two teams specifically. It was the Chiefs and it was the Royals.
oh, I
So
can't stand the Royals.
no one was fans of the organization in that area. You didn't hear a peep about it until they were like
Really good.
good,
Yeah.
and then it was like it was not like, yeah, I'm a Chiefs fan. It was like it was fuck you, you're a Cardinals fan. Fuck you, you're a Packers fan. That. So I was
Or
like,
Rams fan or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So I just like, you're like people from it's funny because like being from the St. Louis area, you like I like Kansas City. Like Kansas City's cool. People from Kansas City, it's like St. Louis is a hellhole, and you should never
Can
venture east. And
And
it's
yes, in Kansas City, just for the record, if you've never been, you guys, I know you guys, Kansas City
love
to me,
Kansas City.
Kansas,
It's
Amazing city.
awesome.
yeah, and I mean, but by the way, so I forgot to mention this. So I caught an article the other day. They're planning on moving Kaufman Park downtown. They're going to move the Royal Stadium downtown. I guess for whatever reason, I don't know. I mean, I don't, one thing you can say about Arrowhead is when you go to Arrowhead, you're in, you're out. I mean, it's just right there off the freeway. You're in, you're out, and that's it. But yeah,
Because no one goes to the Royals game
no, yeah,
because there
I,
was no fans up until they were good, and then when they went being bad again, everybody left.
well, and I hate the Royals with a passion. My brother's a huge Royals fan. The one that we've had on the show before, but he said it's not. I mean, he's been a Royals fan ever since like the '70s. I mean, and he's a Cardinal sympathy. He's kind of like me with the Bears and the Chiefs. He's in the.
Right now, starting at
What was that? Wow. Okay. So, but he's not one of these fair weather fans. And my brother said, there's some times when you can go get the bleacher seats for $15 and you can walk all the way down to third base line and just sit right there in the front row because nobody's there. So it's kind of sad to say that that season, that they have that kind of fan base. I mean, Cardinals, you go to a Cardinals game, we could be freaking 15 games out of first place the last game of the season, and that place is still, still got 40,000 people there. So,
No. Yeah. Well,
so what was your take, Sean? I wanted, you and I have been going back and forth on all this, all the penalty calls and the lack thereof. I mean, the people who are wearing the tinfoil hats, I guess, are, this was a rig. That guy right there, rigged Super Bowl, paid off. We already know that you hate the Hunt family. I already know that, and which I'm not fond of the Hunt family either. I think that Lamar's he's kind, or the, what is his name, Clark Hunt, and so I guess if you take the first name of the letter of his name and then put it with Hunt, then what you would call him, I guess. But anyway. So, what are your? Go ahead and I want to hear these. I want to hear these complaints and just.
Hey, let me just say before we start this, here at the Voice of Reason, we like to hear all sides. So this is Sean's take. Sean, would you consider your take far left or far right on this issue?
On this issue,
yeah, what's
I
your
am
stance
as
on this?
progressive as it gets because it's the Chiefs that are the racist. I mean, they're very clearly, a racist organization.
Okay, I just wanted to make that
And they're
disclaimer
red.
very
They
open.
call it
so.
Red Kingdom. They are literally like Marjorie Taylor Greene's favorite team. Like they're Red Kingdom. Yeah, it writes itself.
Oh my gosh. Okay, go ahead.
So here's my take, and this is on anything. This is MMA. This is sports. Sports write
MMA for
stories
sure.
by just being out there. Right now, here when people talk about like it's scripted, like they wrote the script to get them. No, obviously there's no script writers. It's not the WWE. Okay, they don't put together these storylines, right? However, I do have to paint it very clear. Like watching the last 2 weeks of Chiefs football, if I tried to put bias aside, I saw some of the most horrendous officiating. If we'll put the Super Bowl aside for the last 2 plays that were just blown. But if we go back to the Bengals game, I watched the worst officiated game in history when the Green Bay Packers played the Seattle Seahawks, and the Green Bay Packers caught an interception in the end zone, and they called it a touchdown for the Seahawks. That was
during
until
was that during the referee strike?
That was during the replacement ref era.
Yep, I remember
that. Was up until the AFC Championship game this year, the worst officiated game I've ever watched in my life. I could not wrap my head around how officiating was handled. And here's the thing. The XFL just debuted for the 3rd time, and they had one of the best officiating programs I've ever seen. Everything was so fast. How the NFL does not have this. They literally are like using an Xbox controller to do rewinds on the spot.
And they're transparent with everything. I love that about I told Sean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the only thing I hated about the XFL game yesterday, and I told Sean this on the phone today, was the late start to the Battlehawks game, because I was only able to watch a quarter before I had to go to church. But I mean, they've got everybody mic'd up, and you can hear it. I'm sure there's probably 10-second delay just in case they need to bleep something out or anything like that.
Something like it's usually, I think the FCC is 2 to 3 seconds or something.
But anyway, go ahead.
But no, so when it comes to when people say it's scripted, the screenwriters look at these games, right? When it comes to when we go back and we look at NFL history, you could even say the same thing about the Patriots. Maybe not the first or second Super Bowl they won, but as they continued to kind of dominate, when people were kind of complaining, things went for the Patriots. We're seeing the same kind of thing for the Chiefs. And there's a reason why, is because winning sells. Winning just sells. That's how it is. So when you have an organization that has a marketable person, people forget this. Patrick Mahomes was literally on the Muppets for 60 years before he played a snap of football. Okay? So you have a marketable young quarterback who plays phenomenal football, and you have the smartest head coach
in
the
game,
NFL,
in the end, yeah.
in the game. Does that make him a good person? No. He kept his son, who almost killed
That
a
was
6-year-old,
yep.
on the
He
roster,
did,
on the team,
and
paid.
his own son.
Yes. So you have, so a lot of my gripe is with the organization, right? Which is a different topic for a different day. However, when you see some of these calls or lack thereof certain calls, the reason why people push that it is scripted and that it's all this stuff is you have to think Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, right? People knows that in this particular game, it was best for ratings, best for talk throughout the year. Because here's the deal. Think of it this way. Now, more than ever, is we have the Mahomes-Brady comparison. That is what we're going to have. They now have an entire off season to use that marketing for, now that there's no football, they have an entire offseason for NFL Network to pitch Brady versus Mahomes. Who's the best ever? And they're going to ride those coattails.
I do want to go a little bit on. I do want to go a little bit on the. Oh, thank you. My niece just chimed in. She said, "What a pretty backdrop, Uncle Andy." Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that. But before your guys' time, so I think it's safe to say in the 2000s, it was the early 2000s, it was the Patriots. Before that, in the 90s, and I will buy into Sean's theory. Before the Dallas Cowboys. And Troy Aikman was, I cannot. You give me Joe Buck and Troy Aikman calling a football game, I'd rather sit in a tub full of scissors, because I can't stand either one of them. Because he was Joe. Or Troy Aikman, I think, take too many shots to the helmet, and I would hope to think that there is good officiating in the game. The guys, you're not going to get 100% call game, because there in the Chiefs' defense, there were 3 calls that I think could have went the other way for the Chiefs. That the hit on I can't think of the receiver's name right now. Is Adams, but. We take the hit on the guy. He fumbles the football. We run it back for a touchdown. They say nope, he didn't make a football move, and all this other stuff. The bobbled catch out of bounds, the no call on Ndamukong Suh for face mask. There's to me, I think officials as a guy who coached junior high basketball, of all things, junior high basketball for 15 years. And being a huge basketball fan, and you guys saw me coach, and you guys saw me as a fan, I made it a point to give for the first 5 or 6 years of my coaching career. I made it a point to give grief to refs, because I always thought, oh, they're idiots, they're not. But to me, referees are the human element of the game. But with professional football, and Sean and I have had this discussion before, with professional football, tennis is already doing it. Tennis is already doing it. They've been doing it for 10 years now. And of course, I'm not a huge tennis fan, but they have computerized the entire court. They have lined those courts. You can't
the
say,
same way with soccer.
At
the World Cup,
right? They have the soccer has the 360 cameras all the way around. Like, they can do one of those, what do they call it, just around they can do a panoramic view. If you've ever watched a soccer game, there are some phenomenal shots, but there are no, what's the word I want to use? There's no blind spots in soccer. If you look, there's not such a thing as a blind spot in soccer. And so NFL, okay, you've gotten so they have the camera on the first down marker. They have, or the first down, or the sticks. They have the end zone. But like you said, Sean, about the XFL, I like like you said, the controller playbacks. You're seeing everything. You're hearing the conversation between the booth, between the refs, and they're saying, hey, we need to get this. And again, why can't this be implemented into the NFL? I mean, that takes.
The Skycam came from the XFL. Like people forget like some of these things. And here's the thing: the last 2 points I'll make before we can kind of move on, because I actually have a really good question for Travis. The reason at the end of the day why people, the whole script thing is, you don't want to be the refs. Okay, you don't want to be the team of refs at the end of the game that has to go into an office with Roger Goodell staring at you when you know who football needs to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
You know that for the NFL, it was better that the Chiefs won because they have more of a story to tell for 10 years and not just at the end of the season, where if the Eagles won, we go back and we talk about the Patriots and Eagles football game. It's almost like lost in history because it will be lost in history but if the Patriots would have won, it just would have tacked more on. And again, same for this game. If Eagles would have won, it would have been lost in history over time. And again, it would have been, Mahomes, he only had one. Now we have a lifetime conversation of, is he the same as Brady? No,
he's not the same.
Always had a better team, better coach, regardless. But the other thing is, in the XFL, coaches have the ability to challenge a play, not for like the spot of the ball, but if they still have one timeout remaining, one time a game, they're allowed to challenge. If they think the refs missed a call, they can challenge it. And if they're like, hey, I definitely saw holding, I'm challenging that I saw number 68 holding number 75. I am challenging it that you guys missed it. And I would love for the NFL to implement that kind of stuff because.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think that does to the integrity of the game? I mean, both ways.
Here's where I might disagree with a lot of people. There's certain things I would take the human element out of the game. I would, and because I believe in sports betting, I think that it should be fair. Because this was the question that led to it that I wanted to ask Travis. Travis, with boxing, with MMA, with you. So, for example, I know that you watched the first Triple G and Canelo Alvarez fight. Who do you think won the first one?
It was Triple G, in my opinion.
It wasn't even close. I agree that Triple G, and when they said it was a draw,
I think it was almost close, but I still give it to Triple G, 100%.
With the advancement of AI, could you see boxing and MMA getting rid of human judges and implementing AI judges it would completely take out the bias? You have an AI that evaluates the data the same stats, can literally watch it, see it happen, register what's happening, count every last bit of, and even with new technology, I was having a conversation. There's certain fight leagues that are going to be, that in gloves are going to have sensors. So when someone gets hit, it's going to register how many pounds of force was thrown into these punches. So could you see, 5-10 years down the road, certain leagues implementing AI judging as opposed to human judging? They're like taking human error off the table.
I could. There's definitely a rise in AI, not just in sports, but all over. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard about the whole Chad, GD, whatever the hell it's called. My only worry with like AI, if we're talking about like sports officiating and like judging, is how we talk about integrity. The people building these systems, or the thing behind whatever it is, is that, how do we know that the algorithm isn't getting messed with? Or how do we know that? I mean, I still think I'm still skeptical of it. I mean, it sounds perfect in theory, but humans are the ones that create AI, and humans are biased to begin with. So whether that transfers over or not, I don't know.
Well, I'm really impressed with and you see these advertisements that Amazon. What's the AI that they're using now? Is they advertise it all the time. What's that?
Well, AWS is the Amazon
factoid.
Web.
I mean, it's basically but I mean, they're developing. I mean, I'm with you on that, Sean. The technology is there. I mean, as a so let's throw the football thing out the window. I've been a baseball fan all my life. I've been a Cardinals fan all my life.
Strike zone is what you're about to talk about.
There's one umpire who I absolutely hate. And when he's calling a Cardinals game, I hate Angel Hernandez is by far the worst umpire in the game. Because you can have him one time have a strike zone that is a mile wide and a mile high and a mile deep. But I would be curious as to when television or when networks first started putting their box in there, because now there's so much you can't you and they're holding these umpires' feet to the fire, saying, "Look, you've got to call this the right way." I umpired little league, and whatever you want to call it, Legion ball I did it for like 8 years, and for me it was simple. I mean, you get yourself at the right angle, and you get the right. I mean, when your player comes in, and I tell the coaches, but I always told the coaches before a game, I don't care how high or low you're. I mean, here's where I'm measuring it from. And if your player purposely tries to bend down, I'm gonna bend down lower. I'm gonna call it on him. But it was always. I mean, any umpire can tell you this. Letters to knees. Letters to knees. You watch the corners of the plate, and you watch the corners, and how some of these guys just like. I hate it when an umpire when I've been to a game, I can hear him say strike on the corner. Okay, what corner? Where are you calling that at? How are you calling that? I just put a computer eye back there like they do in tennis. Put a computer eye back there that'll say ball strike, ball strike. You can't argue with it.
Yeah, I think baseball would definitely be a good thing for sure.
I don't know. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I just had a question for Travis because I kind of pulled up a list. I know we went on about football, so I know it's not your favorite sport, so I apologize. I do want to get your opinion. I do want to get your opinion on this Sunday, a big event as far as YouTube boxing goes.
Oh, is that fight this weekend?
I would love to get your opinion on Jake Paul and Tommy Fury and who you have and what are your predictions?
Oh, man, Jake Paul.
I forgot about that.
Dude, Jake Paul. You want to talk about, you were talking about what's good for business with the Chiefs. It's good for business if Jake Paul wins this fight. 100%.
Seriously.
Tommy Fury. And if you look at the whole Tommy Fury and the Jake Paul thing, Fury has backed out numerous times. And this is like they're finally going at it. I would not be surprised if Jake Paul wins at all. I've never even seen Tommy Fury fight. I know he's supposedly a pro fighter. Apparently, if Jake Paul beats him, he's going to get a WBC ranking. That is good for the WBC because Jake Paul pulls numbers. He is a YouTube, he's a brand. I would not be surprised one bit if this is another fucking knockout highlight for Jake Paul or even a decision, whatever they decide. I don't know. I
agree with you. I think this could not end bad for Jake in any way, shape, or form, even if he got knocked out flat. Like, yeah, there's because
then he gets a cop out. Like, I just lost to a professional boxer.
Yeah,
it's my first
like
pro boxer, I thought.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it's like, okay, I lost to a pro boxer. But you're right. Tommy Fury has literally backed out of this fight like 4 times. I have seen Tommy Fury fight. His last fight looked good, but again, he was fighting a scrub. That was the problem with boxing was so many of them, like when boxers first start out, when they actually have a chance to kind of do something in the sport,
they have to fight nobodies.
You fight nobodies, and not only nobodies, you also fight a lot of these journeymen. It is not uncommon for there to be a boxer out there with a record of like 2-47. Like, that's very real. And those are these kind of gatekeepers that like promotions are like, we're going to give you $200. Don't win the fight, dude. Like, I mean, it's I've seen it firsthand.
Oh, for sure.
I work for a company called Next Gen, and it's like the next generation of these young up and coming boxers. We have these guys that are 5-0, or 4-0, 6-0, and they're fighting guys that are 0-11 and 1-4, 1-6. Like kind of these journeyman folks, and it makes them look good because they're crisp and they're fast, they're young, and they're doing these things. They're just piecing up these guys that they got from the bar, essentially, that just so happen to have a pro license.
The odds on
With that said, if Fury loses, I feel like his brother is just gonna throw him off a ship and just be like, don't ever come back into this
Well,
house.
he told him he's like he can just stay in Dubai or whatever the fight's at.
It's
Yeah.
is it in
I don't
Dubai
know.
or Saudi Arabia? I couldn't remember. But
It's in Saudi Arabia, I think. Or
Tyson
Dubai.
Fury is kind of a piece of work himself.
Well,
but
yeah. So Tommy,
Loves
so the
Tyson,
odds are the odd-on favorite is Paul. They have it as a -180 for Paul and plus 140 for Fury. The over/under.
unless,
What do you think the over/under is on rounds?
I don't know.
Just give
It
me a
can't-
guess. How many rounds do you think? They
I see. I
What's the
personally
schedule
think
for?
this
Is it
fight's
12
gonna
round
go-
bout?
Yeah, they've got it scheduled for 12 rounds. They've got it set at 6.5.
Has Paul ever fought 12 rounds?
No.
I've only watched two Jake Paul. When he fought,
I don't think he even went 12 rounds with Silva.
I think Silva was 10.
Silva was 10.
And
I want to say that's the most
And
he's
what
went.
was who was the other big name that he fought?
Woodley? I think that was 8 rounds.
Yeah, those were both 8-round fights.
Yeah.
So this is his first 12-round fight.
Didn't we,
so
wasn't one of those? Didn't we watch one of those? Was that at Spencer's wedding? We were watching that fight.
I don't
remember
we
that I-
watched a fight. There was definitely a fight
I
on.
can't
but
remember who
don't
that was.
think it was a Jake
Anyway,
Paul fight.
yeah.
I would like to pray to God I didn't watch a Jake Paul fight. Our best friend.
It comes with my
overall, like,
streaming.
unless Fury can knock Paul out, I think they give the win to Paul just because, again, it's
For the sport, yeah.
It's too good for business.
Yeah.
WBC needs Paul.
Well, and it's interesting too now because, Jake Paul signed a deal with the PFL, the Pro Fight League.
Yeah.
So I'm actually interested to see like if he actually does transition into mixed martial arts. That is actually
It'd have to be money.
How long of
If it makes sense financially.
How long of a contract does his brother have with the WWE, or is that over with?
It's not over with. He'll be at Mania against Seth Rollins. I don't know. Oh, no, he definitely did sign a contract. I don't know how long it is. I don't know but it's he shows he'll probably wrestle 3 times a year, maybe like the big 4, so maybe 4 times a year.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, he's not there weekly up until 2 or 3 weeks before the main.
You know what's sad? The fact that we're talking about Jake Paul fight this Sunday just shows you how unfortunate the world of boxing is.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's actually a really, really good fight coming up. Like 2 of the best in their division are fighting each other coming up.
Mhm.
Plant and Benavidez.
And Plant
Huge
is
fight. Huge fight.
Love Plant, and Benavidez is a
super
killer,
awesome
so.
guy. Yeah,
Who do you have in that one?
I'm biased. I want Plant to win.
I want
I
Plant
haven't
to win,
seen
but
enough.
the
I haven't seen enough
realist in me
Benavidez, though. I know
sees
he's a killer,
Benavidez.
but I haven't seen enough of his fights.
Hmm.
Actually, I think I saw one of his fights when he beat up some fucking journeyman.
How
that
about
was 3 years ago. I
Ryan
think.
Garcia and
Ooh, another
Tank
good
if
one.
that happens?
I don't think Garcia's ready, man. Tank's different. That
And-
guy's a killer.
Yeah.
That guy is a killer in the ring. But I don't know. I mean, he get caught. Everyone can get caught.
He get caught, and Ryan's probably going to be the fastest dude.
Do you see that hook he threw in that last fight? You didn't even they had to do slow motion just to see him catch that guy with that hook.
Are you
That was
talking
how fast it
about
was.
Garcia's?
Yeah, his last knockout he had, that was insane.
Well, it would be wild. I remember when he was coming up on YouTube before he was like really, really big, and you would just see he would be doing speed bag stuff.
Yeah, he was
and
always doing the speed stuff.
Yeah, I had never seen anybody move that quick.
He's quick. I'll give him that. He's quick.
But when you're punching with kitten mittens, as what Michael Bisping
different.
used to say, yeah, it's different.
It's different when you're in the ring.
And then
So that'd be a good
later
fight.
this year, McGregor and Chandler has been announced.
Yep.
Yeah.
Saw that. Saw
McGregor-
that.
What
Saw
are
that.
your guys' take on that?
It's great
When was
for
McGregor's
UFC. They're about
last?
to make
When was
bank.
McGregor's last fight?
McGregor's last fight was when he snapped his leg against Dustin Poirier.
Yeah. Oh yes.
All right, Sean.
Yeah.
Sean,
Oh.
I know you're.
Ah.
Do you really think? I love McGregor. Or at least I did. back when he was like the killer he was.
He's soft.
Do you really think he beats Michael Chandler? Chandler's lost a lot of fights, but he's put up some damn good fights. I mean, the guy's
He
exciting.
has- Here's the thing.
Guy can fight.
My only thing is Chandler is a lot like Eddie Alvarez.
That's
And
true.
my only thing is if any like Chandler's already had his chin tested in the UFC. It's tough, man. I think that but here's the thing too is I don't think Connor's chin is as, strong as it was. He's been cracked in a lot of these fights, knocked out. So here's I think if McGregor treats it like he did Alvarez, keeps his distance, the second that Chandler comes in, he throws and he hits him with the left. I think McGregor wins.
If he's smart and he plays on the outside, absolutely.
Yeah. I just, like
And
we saw it against Nate, we saw it against Poirier. Like when he eats shots, his gas tank will be here, and when he eats shots,
he slows down so fast.
the thing that really surprises me about MMA that you don't see so much as you do in, I think the age limits. I mean, these guys, and I find it strange that these guys have a longer duration as far as being in their quote unquote prime. I mean, because Chandler's in it, they're both in their 30s. They're both in their mid 30s. McGregor, is he 37 or 38? I believe 36.
No, I think he's like 33 or 34.
Yeah, he's not that old yet.
Look that up, but I and one thing 34. I did find out, he's 34. Okay. And Michael Chandler, he's a local boy, right? He's from High
He wrestled at
High Hill, High Ridge. He's from High Ridge, that's down by Columbia, right?
He wrestled for Mizzou.
Yeah, he wrestled for Mizzou.
That's right.
And I'm always amazed because, in a lot of these other sports, when you start getting into your 30s, you're like getting ready to be put on the shelf, and I find it amazing how MMA fighters, and even though it's, professional wrestling, but even some of these guys who have went as long as they have and the damage that they've done to their body and how they just...
Well, you got to think too. I mean, an NFL season, you got a starting athlete performing 16 events?
Yeah.
17.
And these guys
You have a UFC athlete who's doing performances, 3, maybe 4 times if he's super active a year.
Yeah.
And some fights they might not even take damage, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I've always found that fascinating about MMA, but I guess we need to move on to a couple other things. Well, that's a good discussion.
We're turning into a sports podcast.
I know, right? That was good though. But I want to talk about these. So in the last 2 weeks now, now we have shot down a total of 5 different UFOs. 4. Let's see. The one in Alaska.
There was this
the one in Alaska. The
spy balloon off the coast of Carolina. They shot down.
The UFO over Alaska, and then the one at Port over Lake, one of the Great Lakes. It wasn't Lake Michigan.
Lake Huron. And Canada.
Right. So 4. Okay. So 4. What do you guys, I mean, is this like, oh, hey, don't look at the man behind the curtain. Let's look over here at this little, ooh.
Here's what confuses me with all this. So obviously we determined that the first balloon was in fact a Chinese spy balloon. They recovered it. But these other ones. So the one in Alaska, apparently now they're saying that it was like some hobby balloon from a company here in Chicago, Illinois or something like that. It was like there was some, I don't have the article in front of me, but apparently there was like some $100 balloon that this company had made. It went off track.
Oh, geez.
And they said it was, or maybe that was the Lake Huron one.
That was the Lake Huron one because they said the payload on the Lake Huron one was the size of a small car. The payload on that one.
Okay, so one of these things was apparently a company's claiming that it might have been their balloon because that's kind of the area they were tracking that it ended up. And apparently, this was like $100 balloon that a 40 or $400,000 missile engaged and destroyed. So that's pretty fascinating. But here's what's really frustrating. So we got the Chinese spy balloon, right? The other two objects, the one in Alaska and the one in Canada. Apparently, they stopped. Well, they stopped searching for the Lake Huron one to know exactly what it is. They stopped searching for that one, and they said they stopped searching for the one in Alaska due to conditions and the weather, and they said they can't get to it. There's still a lot of unanswered questions, and there's been such a lack of transparency with all of it. Like when this first happened, like obviously the Ohio thing happened, and we're going to talk about that another time, and that didn't really get the coverage I think it needed.
Still isn't, no.
Yeah, exactly. But like when this Chinese spy balloon happened, where the hell was the president? Like this is kind of a big deal, and we're having multiple of these things. And now I know he addressed the shoot down of the one on the State of the Union, but still, like
he mentioned it. He mentioned it not even. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
Briefly mentioned it and called it a success or whatever, and just carried on with his speech. But it was like I was very alarmed by the lack of. I mean, obviously, news sources were like blowing it up, like fear mongering the hell out of it, but there was like no answers to anything. Everything was very vague. And in that one, there was that general or like the security advisor, whoever he was, who came out and was like, well, we can't confirm what this is. All options are on the table, extraterrestrial or whatever. Like the guy literally said that.
Just shut up.
Yeah. And now they're like backtracking everything. Well, we know what. Where's the transparency? Where's like tell us what the hell's going on?
Well,
like, you mean to tell me they gave up and just said, we're not going to worry about that thing in Lake Huron or that thing in Alaska. And what was disturbing too, sorry I'm rambling.
No, go ahead.
I think it was the Lake Huron one. Sean, or one of you guys might be able to correct me on this. Didn't we read that apparently this thing was able to like jam the sensors or like the radars on like the aircraft, and like they lost detection of it and then they detected it again?
I did not hear that. Wow.
Maybe I read that something wrong somewhere, but I don't know. And you hear the descriptions. I mean, none of the descriptions add up. Everyone's given a different description of what it is, if you can even find a description of what these things are.
Well, we played the audio.
I almost wonder. Go ahead.
We had the audio. Didn't we share that on the group chat this week? The audio from the
I think that audio was just confirming that they were doing the.
They didn't know what they were shooting down. I mean, they said, well, it could be a balloon. We don't know what it is. It's got strings hanging down from it or whatever. And they couldn't identify what it was. But
there's still a lot of unanswered questions about it. And it sounds like now the government's just saying, oh, we give up.
Yeah.
Really? I don't know if I buy that. Well, I really don't know if I buy that.
And so if you guys saw the news from the weekend, the G8, there's a G8 summit that's going on in, I believe, somewhere in Europe. Biden showed up in Kiev this morning, which was a surprise visit. And at the early, the preliminary, all the primary people are already meeting in wherever it's at in Europe. And yesterday, Secretary of State Blinken met with his Chinese counterpart. They met for over an hour, and it was a very high tension meeting. It was, basically Blinken issuing warnings to, stop doing your spy balloon program. And, the speculation is that this is being done to step up, that they're afraid that China's going to start stepping up its support for Russia and the invasion of the Ukraine. And what was basically the response of his Chinese counterpart was basically, hey, you shut down our weather balloon. I mean, even yesterday, he still held on to that, even though we have all of this stuff and it's sitting in Virginia right now and in a lab being poured over. This guy's still saying, well, it was a weather balloon. And it just drifted off course. I mean, they're still selling that lie. No, it was not a spy balloon.
Well, they can get away with it.
Well, of course they can.
Do anything about it.
And I mean, to me, so this is what's bothering me about this. This is a major fracture that has occurred between us and the Chinese. I mean, this goes back a couple of years. I mean, I trace it back to basically the trade wars that Trump had with the Chinese. I mean, I trace
Things
it
have
back.
definitely gotten worse.
Yeah, things have gotten worse. And so, the thing that Blinken really brought out yesterday in the report that I read was that, the United States is concerned about China is he's concerned, and this is what really scared the crap out of him. He's concerned they're going to start expanding beyond espionage. And he left it wide open like that. So you can't say something like that. And what do you mean? So are there going to be these balloons that are going to start releasing toxins in the air? Or are there going to be, what are you saying? And so he kind of
Look what
left,
that one Air Force general came out and said.
yeah, that these balloons,
Well,
at 60, no, we said last week, what was it? Or 2 weeks ago, Travis, what was it? We said they were flying, they shot up at like 120,000 feet. So
I thought it was like 40,000
well,
at one point.
yeah,
maybe.
anyway, these things are at an altitude where they can, you start spraying that stuff, it's going to cover a wide area of land. And that's stuff like that it may not be something so blatantly obvious that the Chinese are doing something, but I think this is a signal in the shift of where the Chinese are heading. Because I think and this is just pure my own, this is not based off of anything I've read. This has just been my own personal feelings. I think the Chinese are tired of us pushing them around because they realize that they have muscle. And, I don't like Trump's, I didn't like Trump's the way Trump tried to bully him. Obama tried to coddle him. Biden's not being very aggressive with him. I think they're
I don't
seeing.
think Biden knows what to do with them.
No.
In all honesty, I don't think they have an answer
No,
to
they
it.
don't, because so what are you going to do with this? We've shot this thing down. I can tell you my beliefs back during the Cold War, this was an act of war. We almost went to nuclear war in the 60s when the Russians shot down a U-2 spy plane in Russian airspace. We were on the verge of pushing the button. And now we're just kind of, and we're coming, we really, in my opinion, we really are coming off as weak. And it's not just because we have Joe Biden at the front. I think over the last 10 years, we've come across as weak to the Chinese. Trump.
So here's apparently they came out and said that they had been tracking this balloon since its launch.
Yeah.
They knew exactly when this balloon entered U.S. airspace. And they said, well, we were jamming it. Why wouldn't you, all right, they were worried about shooting it down due to like infrastructure issues, or it could damage or kill somebody, whatever the dangers were.
Yeah.
If you are truly tracking this thing from the time it left and immediately entered U.S. airspace is out in the ocean. There's nothing out there. Like, it's not just the land.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we not shoot this thing down as soon as it entered U.S. airspace?
Because and again,
knew if we knew about it, if it's what they're saying is true, and they knew about it.
If you read some of these other reports, though, that this was something, and I think we discussed this before, this is something that has been common. That this isn't the Chinese first rodeo. This wasn't the Chinese first rodeo. This is the first one that
went public.
And that was purely, and we talked about that in that show a couple weeks ago. Purely accidental that it went public. I think if this thing didn't go public, they would have let that sucker just fly all the way back to China.
Oh, for sure.
But I don't know. Sean, what do you think?
One of the things that I had actually, a video I had watched, and I don't remember if it was one of you guys showed it to me or if I just stumbled upon it, was one of the things that people are kind of talking about is apparently the Chinese actually have the capabilities to shoot satellites out of orbit. Now, the issue is they don't have the structures in place to be able to do so. So, oh no, it was a video I watched, and if you look at a lot of the movements south, so a lot of these places in the ocean where the Chinese are moving vessels, there's a lot of talk that they could potentially be doing. You remember how we were talking a little while ago how the Chinese were building a very large man-made island, essentially, that was for military operations?
Right, right.
That was kind of a tester island to see if they had like what needed to be done in order to do so. And now they've started to strategically place their ships towards Antarctica, towards some of these other places where they would need to put together these islands in order to build the infrastructure to be able to set up the kind of technology that we're talking about. So I think there's a lot of cat and mouse in a sense. We don't know, like maybe these weather balloons could have actually been sending intel to China about different movements and different patterns and different things. But it also could have been, hey, we could kind of just keep them busy with this while we do things over here. So while, you know, the United States military is tracking what's going on, the people are loud about one thing, because like one of my biggest gripes that I see on like online is people talk about how like the United States military would roll over if we ever got into war with the Chinese. People forget we spend like triple the amount of money on our military defense than anybody else. Our military is pretty damn good, and it's also funny because like we have all these people talking like, oh, we would lose this, but it's like, you think that we're showing all of our eggs?
We're not showing all of our cards. No.
No.
So, like, that's the another thing that kind of gets me. So, while China and Russia do it very, very well, I would say China and Russia do a phenomenal job about getting the American population stirred up about what our interactions are.
Oh,
with them.
for sure. Yeah.
And
There's definitely some
know,
psyops at play.
And here's the thing: look at China. Like, there's a reason why they don't have TikTok. There's a reason why they don't have Facebook. There's a reason why they don't have Twitter. Why? Because they don't want Americans to stir shit over there. And I'm sure that we do, and I'm sure that there's all kinds of stuff that gets said. But guess what? The Communist Party, you think that you're monitored here in America on the shit that you put on the internet? Billionaires.
Yep.
The most protected people in the world, billionaires in China, go missing for things that they say or things that get leaked out about that kind of shit. So, it can't always get twisted. So I definitely think that some of these kind of things that they do are this cat and mouse. Let's stir up this American population. Like, it's a different story for a different day, but I legitimately know someone who this past week thought that we were being invaded by aliens. Legitimately was terrified. Terrified that we were being invaded by aliens I think that there's a lot of kind of cat and mouse play at this. Like, let's feed them a little. Let's give these people something to talk about. And yeah, we know that their military is tracking our movements, but the people are going to be loud about this thing, and that's the kind of stuff that I that's kind of how I'm taking it.
Well, in state media in China, so I've mentioned this in previous podcasts before. China they have the ultimate control over even internet. They call it they actually call it the Great Internet Wall of China, because they have so much control over what is put. There's a Chinese version of YouTube. There's a Chinese version of YouTube. When you go over there, you can get YouTube. But like, for example, I did, when I was there one time, when we were there, I asked our tour guide, when we were in Beijing, I asked him, I said, so what do you know about the student revolt of 1989 when the communists shut down Tiananmen Square? We don't talk about that. That's all he said. He said, we don't talk about that. And I was kind of okay. So what do you guys talk about? and the amount of, like you said, Facebook. There's no. They have one. They have the state social media over there, and they allow what can be talked about on state social media. There is no Twitter. There is no. And we have VPNs over here. You can get these virtual private networks, and their access to Fox, CNN, MSNBC, BBC. All you see is CCN, which is the
You can't get Big Black Cock and Trent.
No, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure there's Chinese bukkake videos
sure
that are
there's
out
a
there.
way.
There's Chinese bukkake videos that are out there, Sean. Don't worry. So, but I think that it's those areas still exist. There are still, just like, and we're going to get into this next week. And just to give you guys a little spoiler for next week, we were going to touch a little bit on this thing that's going on in Ohio. But as we got into, we were a little bit late to the show on this one. This, the media control, not only here, but everywhere else, the media controls what's being, what the narrative is. And we are going to look at this thing in Ohio next week. There is a lot of no information. I'm not even going to say misinformation. There's a lot of media silence that is not happening in this little town in eastern Ohio. And but it's the same thing across the board. And and I wanted to go back, with the whole balloon thing and all this stuff. Why I said, why I thought it was, hey, don't look at the man behind the mirror, because I just briefly, we're running out of time, but I just briefly want to say, because the State of the Union address was such a disaster, I think media outlets needed something to divert the attention away from the State of the Union and to say, oh, look at this, we're being invaded. Like you said, Sean, we're, you get the people with the tinfoil hat saying, we're being invaded by aliens. The State of the Union was the biggest poo show that I have. It, to me, was a disaster. For Joe being Joe, of course. I mean, when he's got the cards right there in front of him, he still struggles with it. But the thing that angered me the most about the State of the Union was the heckling, literally heckling of a president, of a sitting president. And this is only, that, and I look back when Obama gave his last State of the Union address. There was a guy, I forgot where he was from, but he got up and he said, Obama had made some statement. He said, and this guy got up and said, "You're a liar." And that guy was immediately called on the carpet. But during this year's State of the Union address, Marjorie Taylor Greene, whatever that fur thing was that she had wrapped around her head, make her look like she was, yeah, exactly. There you go. Okay, do the tomahawk chop. But she was, she was constantly heckling, and so then you've got the Speaker of the House. Why is his name escaping me right now?
McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy. So he's up there and he's just, and constant heckling and all of this, and
well, he was doing some stuff too.
Oh,
if he
yeah.
was in the back, if I don't make a statement and he's in the back, she could say, "That's not true. That's not true."
No.
Like,
of course, Joe was also saying that the Republicans want to phase out Medicaid and Medicare.
yeah,
and it's like,
he
come
was
on.
actually he was bullshitting, making
Yeah.
up some stuff for sure.
But here's my point is this: did I vote for Joe Biden? Nope. Is he my president? Yes. I don't necessarily have to respect Joe Biden as a person, but I have respect for the office of the president.
The rank, not the man.
Yeah, you have respect. You respect. Did I vote for Donald Trump? Did I like? No way did I say I like Donald Trump, but I still respected the office. I respected it when Obama was in there. Did I vote for that guy? No, I haven't. By the way, I haven't voted for a winning president since George W. Bush. I've given up trying, but you know, you to be in that arena when you were there, when you're there gathered before both houses of Congress, you have guests up in the gallery, foreign dignitaries. You have the parents of that young man who was slain by those 5 cops. You have and all of this, and you have the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, which, by the way, Joe Biden could not pronounce her name, so he just said, "We welcome the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States," and he couldn't say her name, which I thought was totally hilarious. But it was so embarrassing for us to the rest of the world to show this. And I usually show it to you guys know, in government class, I always show the State of the Union address. This was the first time in my 25 years of teaching, no lie, first time in my 25 years of teaching, I did not show the State of the Union address to the class. Because
it was a shit show.
Yeah. It was an embarrassment. I couldn't, there were
Both sides.
There were no talking points. There were no good, there were no good talking points. There were no good anything. And then, even you're starting to see the rumble between the Republican Party at the State of the Union. You saw Mitt Romney walking up to that guy from New York, George. It's not Is it Santos? Whatever, the guy the guy who's lied about everything.
I think it is George Santos.
I loved it. You could read Mitt Romney's lips as plain as day. You shouldn't even be here. He said you shouldn't be here. Just calls from and you're starting to see this. George Santos. Okay, so you're seeing this rift in the Republican Party, and I'm sticking with my prediction that if Donald Trump doesn't get the nomination, we're going to see a split. It's just I don't want to say that America is waning in popularity, and I still believe we live in a very great country, and I believe in everything that America, as the values that it stands for, as put in the Constitution, but we're a long way from that now. So.
Agreed. I could go on for like 20 minutes on what I thought the State of the Union.
Go ahead.
I'll be quick. I just remember thinking when I was watching this, like, this is all a show. I had no confidence leaving that speech. I felt like I was watching a play. And I remember I watched the State of the Union when Obama was president. And I think I even remember one of the Trump ones I watched. I never seen anything like what I saw with the Biden one. And it wasn't just Biden. It was everything from the Republicans bickering, the facial expressions, the unprofessionalism of both sides, and then just the speech itself. Like you said, there was no good talking points. I didn't feel like it united anything. If anything, it was pointing fingers and shots fired left and right. Guy was mumbling all over the place like always. I didn't leave with any confidence whatsoever of American, no real pride from it. I didn't feel like I got a good State of the Union and where we are as a country from it. And the biggest thing, it was just I left that thinking, I don't know what I just watched. That was a show.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a drama. I don't know what that was.
Sean, what were your thoughts?
I still need to go back and do another deep dive of it and just kind of sit and listen. Like,
it's hard to.
It is hard. Even the 20-ish minutes of it that I've kind of listened to, it was tough. And we'll kind of talk about it a little bit more probably next week. But we have these, they're almost caricatures of what a representative should be at this point. Again, both sides. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of those dangerous.
Very.
And again, we'll hit on this more next week because I know we're pretty much out of time here. But this is the same woman that today went on a rant about how Republican states need to separate themselves from the United States of America.
Oh God, you're kidding me.
I'm not.
God.
You can go to her. You can quite literally go to her Twitter, and
Yeah, he made
actually,
some
I've got a
stupid
second.
statement
So
about it today.
yeah, went on about how
They need
yeah,
like
red
the
states,
divorce. They need a
yeah,
divorce.
red states need to divorce from this country. Oh gosh, here let me.
That's terrible.
Yes, we need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this. From the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to Democrats' treacherous American last policies, we are done. And John Stewart with the comment on top that made me laugh the most. But we get to keep the name, right?
Oh my gosh.
He is very missed.
Oh.
He is very missed.
Yeah. God.
But no, we'll deep dive into that more next week, and we'll actually put together and hopefully maybe with some actual answers as to what's kind of going on in Ohio and why there hasn't really been.
We were going to do some
much
research.
talk.
Yeah, hopefully, I'm sure more information will come out on everything
Yep.
by then, and we can touch. Yeah.
Gentlemen, this was a great episode.
Yes,
I actually had
yes.
a ton of fun. It's always good to kind of shoot from the hip, and as we've kind of taken the time off. But it is crazy because we're. It's my Facebook memories told me that we're getting very close to year 2. And one thing that kind of before we get off here that I want to mention, one really cool thing about our show is, and what I get excited about is any of these big podcasts. So 2 of the big ones that I really listen to a lot are obviously Joe Rogan podcast, big fan of, but I also listen to one that's called Last Podcast on the Left, which is a true crime podcast. What's very interesting is I've listened to them at the very beginning, and they were not very good. Okay, were not very good, and it took them time to get to where they are now. Now, obviously, everyone knows who Joe Rogan is, and Last Podcast on the Left does over 50,000 on Patreon each month, so they're a very successful podcast. But now we are getting to the block where in the next couple of months we are going to be able to make that kind of transition as they did into really growing as a podcast, into really doing some things differently for our listeners. And so I'm really excited. Right now it's February. I think towards the end of spring and early summer, we're going to give you guys some great new content to be excited about. Some great things are going to happen here, and stick with us, be patient. But one of the big things is everyone and their dog talks about how there's a billion podcasts. I remember some asshole that we've invited several times to be on this podcast continue to bitch about how, there's too many podcasts. But this particular podcast falls in a very, 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 very small percentile of continuing the show. And this is where a lot of podcasts that have been around, we are now getting into the point where we are getting ready for growth and getting ready to do things a bit differently and to provide you guys with excellent content and hopefully continue to see this thing take off. So to our listeners, thanks again for giving us the week. It was much needed. This episode was a ton of fun. And next week, hopefully we can get back to our grassroots and give you guys some good things. Gentlemen, as always, it was great to see you. And unless you two have anything, that is all from me, the voice of reason. So we will talk to you guys next week.